Welcome, everybody, to the retake of the annual producers conference. We misplaced a video and are re-recording, so I really appreciate Doug Young for joining us today. Doug comes to us from Spruce Haven Farms and is going to talk to us about nutrient applications, the application of manure and nutrients for growing corn. So, Doug, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lucero. I appreciate the chance to revisit this information and to see you and talk with you again. I've already learned quite a bit from you, so I appreciate the opportunity. We have a dairy farm in New York State. We have about 2,000 cows and 3,100 acres of cropland of corn and alfalfa and occasionally some wheat. So I've been trying to understand the topic of soil health for several years under Jim Martindale's tutelage and also other scientists who are way ahead of my understanding and other farmers. So one of the things we're trying to make some progress on is how do we apply manure nutrients in a way that recovers a higher percent of the nitrogen and phosphorus and allow us to reduce our purchases of commercial fertilizer. That would give our mass balance a much better situation and obviously our business model more strength. So we developed a concept that came from Denmark, and I'll give you a little bit of overview of the experience from Denmark. I found that they're about 20 years ahead of us on this topic. Their government, about 25 years ago, made a policy decision to improve the efficiency of recovery of nitrogen and phosphorus and put in place a series of laws and financial incentives to help the agricultural sector make progress. So you'll see on the chart a graph of the progress they've made over 25 years in nitrogen efficiency. On the left side of the chart, you'll see the advent of the Industrial Revolution in the 20s, where it's made possible making fertilizer and transporting fertilizer long distances. So the efficiency went down substantially as we increased yields. But then as water quality issues became a concern, the government put in place a law that said you can only apply manure and nutrients on a growing corn crop, or not corn, but any crop. So you can see to the right, a third of the graph, it shows a doubling of the efficiency of the nitrogen use over that time period. And one of the key aspects of their policy is the fact that you can only apply manure nutrients to the growing crop. And they've mastered this. They have the technology and the testing to optimize the whole system. But in Denmark, they don't have corn. They have ryegrass, so it's a short crop, so it's easy to apply multiple applications during the growing season, and they always have the same drive path. And so for a very small percentage of pathways, they substantially improve their yields and nitrogen recovery efficiency. So we have a long ways to go in our country to catch up with Denmark, but fortunately we can take what they've learned and apply it here. The same is true for their phosphorus. This is the next slide. So this is an inverse, but it also shows the net balance of phosphorus. So again, they've doubled the improvement in a 20-year period. So they're really tightened up their losses of nitrogen and phosphorus in their whole country. So since we have corn in the United States, we tried to figure out how can we apply nutrients to the growing corn crop, and you need something a lot taller. So we developed this piece of equipment in front of us. We're on version 4. Each time we make a lot of mistakes and try to strengthen it. These are some shots taken at research plots in Ohio and Indiana over the last 3 years. The upper left shows a small tractor hooked to a hard-nosed traveler that will has about a quarter of a mile of hose, a 4-inch hose. So you deliver the manure through the hose and then to the hard hose traveler and then out into the boom. The upper right shows the nutrient boom in position next to the reel. So you hook onto this with a tall sprayer like a Hagee or a Walker. You pull it out into the field a quarter of a mile, and then you unhook it, and then you start up the distribution system. And there's a 5-horse Honda motor on the hard hose traveler that pulls in the boom. It takes about an hour and a half to pull it in, and distributes at a rate of about 400 gallons a minute, whatever amount of manure nutrients you want. We generally shoot for 9,000 or 10,000 gallons on each pass. In the lower left, it shows the distribution chamber, which is very common in Denmark, to make sure that the nutrients are evenly distributed over the 120-foot boom. And there's a little Honda motor on there that runs the distributor and also allows the hydraulic controls on the wings for height. The lower left just shows what it looks like after you've applied the manure nutrients to growing corn. Depending on the amount of solids, it soaks into the root zone fairly quickly, or if you have more fibers, it stays on the surface longer. So here's a video. I'm not sure if this is going to work or not, but Mary, do you see a spot there that will start that playing?
I do not. Is this on YouTube?
This is a video, so it gives the listener a better idea of how this works, but I don't think it's going to work in this presentation. But we have lots of video showing it working. If there's someone that has particular interest, I can give them that links.
Okay, if you have it up on something like YouTube, they've got a little app in here that will play it.
Well, we could do that, but I'm afraid it would take up too much time. So if there's a listener interested, then we'll deal with that. So here's a few pictures of the test plot that we did this last year in collaboration with Cornell University and a neighboring farmer. Just some visuals to show the obvious difference in the nitrogen status of the crop with and without. The left is without, and right is with the nutrient boom application. And another shot. This is interesting. I'm a pilot, so I flew over the test plot that you see on the lower right about a month after we applied the first pass of the nutrient boom, and I added the lines after the fact with the computer-enhanced software, and shows where the test plots are. But can you see my arrow moving?
No, we can't.
Okay. All right, but you'll see the lighter green. There's 4 plots that are lighter green visually, and those are the 4 that did not receive any nutrient application with the boom. So I was surprised, and just flying over, you could see the difference right from the air. So that was. This is the next slide shows the actual yield results, and again you can see the obvious difference in yield. So the upper left shows 2 plots that received no nutrient from the manure. The bottom one on the left didn't receive any, and on the right side you can see the plot with the purple. That also did not receive any nutrients from the boom. So the dark green is the highest yields, and reddish, purplish are the lowest yields. So we just got a report just yesterday from Cornell showing the statistics and the results. So that will be published probably within the next few months. This next slide shows the data. You can't really see it very well, but it's each plot has the yield and the nitrogen application and the net margin for each plot. So each strip was divided in half, and then within each half was divided again in thirds with 3 different levels of nitrogen application post corn was about 4 feet tall. So this was a wet spring, so a lot of the nitrogen that was in the ground pre-plant was lost because of the nitrification in the wet soils. This next one is an attempt to put it in terms a farmer can quickly visualize the benefits, and the green columns on the left are the net margins of the boom-treated plots. On the right, there are the red results showing the net margin of those that didn't receive the nutrients from the manure. So it's gross value of the corn yield minus the supplementary nitrogen cost is how that calculation was done. Then beyond the manure, we're still trying to understand our soil health status, so we took some samples of our farm and also 2 other farms that have had a longer history of managing for soil health, see where our opportunities for improvement are, and this was kind of surprising to us that our soils do rank very well in soil health. It's probably because we have a 4-year alfalfa rotation, so that helps rebuild the soil, and then we apply manure to the corn silage acres. I expected it to be poorer because we still chisel plow and then drag or disc, and so we go over the ground 2 or 3 times before we plant. So we're not doing the best in terms of preserving the carbon in the soils. But this told us that we're still in pretty good shape, but there's, I'm sure, room for improvement still. Mary could probably talk about the analysis better than I can, but these are some measures that have been recommended by the scientists of how to assess soil health. VLFA, diversity index, fungi to bacteria ratio, predator to prey ratio, and of course the old standard organic matter percentage. Then they have a soil health index and a CO2 burst. So those are some of the measures that have been recommended to assess soil health. The top 2, we did both kinds of tests to get a more thorough understanding. At this point, I don't know if it's worth our investment to do a lot more testing. It's a lot of hassle and expense, and it looks like we may not have that much more to gain, but I think our next step will be to use Dr. Lucero's recommendation of having an on-farm lab where we can bring in soil samples and look at them under a microscope and assess where we stand and where the opportunities for improvement are. And, we're looking forward to that. So that's not a very expensive proposition, and we can get immediate feedback and better understanding of what we should be looking for. Another topic that seems to be growing in interest is the GMO debate, and I really wonder if it's really about GMOs or is it about the risk of glyphosate buildup in the soils and spilling over into our food supply. So we did a test just to figure this out, and we tested our milk and our corn silage, which is our biggest food ingredient in our cows, and both of those tests were negative. And they both went down to a fairly low level of sensing. So we will watch this issue and see if we start to see it in our cow feeds, and then we will address it as appropriate. We will be bringing out a consumer product, so we need to be prepared to answer any questions that a consumer might have. So that's probably as far as we're going to go with it. So that's our current thoughts. I've mentioned some of these already, but soil health and glyphosate awareness are very important, and we've been planning to track the science and consumer attitudes to optimize yields and human and animal health. And, we're believers that human health really comes to a large degree from the food that we eat, of course, and exercise, but in the food that we eat is often relates to the soil, goes back to the soil health. And if we can optimize soil health, we should be able to optimize the nutrition of the food that humans eat and thereby improve human health and reduce those incidents that seem to be growing and how common they are. It seems like every family has some family member who's suffering from some sort of food-related difficulty. So the testing we did in 2015 showed that we are actually in good shape on our soil health. We're very good or excellent, and our glyphosate tested negative. So we really are having a hard time justifying further testing, but we will monitor it. And if milk prices recover, we'll probably do some more testing just to make sure, add confidence level of the results we've already had. And I mentioned we'll be setting up a farm laboratory. So that's the last of the thoughts. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or email me, and we'll have a further discussion. Okay?
Doug, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I don't know if I talked about this earlier on the original conference, but I probably spend about half my time actually working with urban consumers who know almost nothing about agriculture. And so you get all these perceptions and all these misunderstandings. And what I love about your talk here is you really demonstrate your proactive stance and what you're doing to maintain the health and to address the consumer needs. And that's a story that doesn't get told often enough. So I thank you for illustrating that. I loved the precise data and just the illustrations of the lengths you are going through to make sure that you do have healthy soils and you are putting out a good product. The soil microbes do so much to restore that a lot of times even some of the chemicals we're using can be cleaned up if the microbes are present. And so, it all comes down to that soil health. Get them up high enough and you might not even need the chemicals, and then you're saving money.
Right. I want to point the listeners to a book written by Gary Fick. He's a retired professor from Cornell University. He's an agronomist and really a specialist in sustainable agriculture, and he wrote a book called Food, Farming, and Faith, and it ties in the importance of biblical wisdom to practices in food production and human health. So really interesting. He has a class that he teaches at Cornell. It's about 20 students. It's a 1 credit hour course, and they go through his book and have discussions about the role of faith and food production. So I think there should be a lot more of that in universities across our country. So thanks again, Mary, for your hosting. And we look forward to working with you in the years ahead.
Likewise. Well, thanks for joining us.
Okay. Take care.